Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dialogues and Dice. This is the show where we talk about all things D&D related, role-playing game related, and gaming related in general, as well as bring you up to date on our story so far in the campaign. So I'm joined tonight with none other than Shagget.
Hello guys, how are you doing?
Also known as Radovan Rainier, your cleric of St. Cuthbert, war priest.
War priest of St. Cuthbert. Let's get rid of the cleric and just be the war priest. That's what I say.
War priest. I think that's
the
exactly,
same
because
thing.
you are not. You no longer. You know, you are a war priest now. You're more
Badass. Possibly.
more badass.
Maybe.
Yeah, you're full of bolsteringness. You know, you've got a bigger. Your chest is a lot puffier.
If only my dice, actually, mirrored that sentiment.
If your dice
yeah.
would actually, if your dice would back your plays, I hear you.
But hi guys.
Indeedy. So tonight, before we get to our usual paraphernalia, we have a very special guest joining us. His name is Mr. John Sheldon. He is the creator, director, do-it-aller for a very, very cool YouTube video. Now, if you haven't seen this YouTube video, we're going to link it to you. I don't want you to watch it yet. If you haven't already seen it, don't watch it now, because I don't want you to miss the show. Because it's an hour-long documentary, but it is incredibly interesting. And it is something that's going to be worth every one of your time. You spend 3 hours watching our silly antics. Trust me, you can spend an hour watching this, because you're going to learn some stuff from it. And it's very interesting. And it really addresses a lot of points that I think people kind of overshadow in the role-playing game industry. For some of us that have been playing for a very, very, very long time, we understand the concept of diversity, because when I was a kid, 11 years old, playing D&D, admitting that that's what you did got you beaten up.
Right, the stigmas and stuff,
right.
Yeah.
And now, socially, the gaming is more acceptable, but while that has become more of an acceptable thing, the stigmas associated with diversity and ethnicity and all that sort of stuff still kind of follow us around. So we're going to go to our first segment this evening and welcome our guest in to join us. So here we go with our first segment of the evening.
Special guest.
Please welcome to the show, Mr. John Sheldon of YouTube fame.
Hello.
How are you doing, sir?
Pretty good.
Good,
Not exactly
good.
famous, but maybe I'm getting there.
Hey, I think that the diversity, when I first found it to now, it's definitely starting to find some hits. It seems to slowly be growing in popularity, and I think the more people start to see this and become aware of it, I think it's going to be one of those videos that is going to be something that most people in the role-playing game world are going to want to watch. So, as I said, I'm going to give you the link to it, but I'm going to ask you guys not to go watch it right now, because I want you to hang out with us and watch the, but I'm going to put it up there. So to view the Diversity in Gaming documentary, go here, save that link, watch it after the show.
Yeah. Bookmark it, and then share it, and then Facebook
retweet it, throw it out there.
Tweet it.
Do what it is that we do best, and help this thing get out to the masses. So, let's kind of start out with a couple of really, there's some interesting stuff here that we want to talk to you about. So, what got you started making YouTube videos? And in particular, why did you decide to do the Diversity in Gaming documentary?
Well, I started doing the YouTube videos partly because my job when I was in the Army was broadcast journalist. So I had, a lot of professional experience with doing video editing and sort of some documentary style shooting and filmmaking. And I really wanted to get back into doing some of that and produce a little bit of video content, because it's something I'm really kind of passionate about.
Right.
But I'm also passionate about, gaming and tabletop role-playing particularly. So that's one of the reasons that starting to get back into the community after not having kind of gamed publicly with anyone for a couple of years. Started going to some conventions and talking to people, and I noticed that there were people talking about this, and at the time I didn't know anything about these issues. So as I learned about them, I figured I wanted to let other people know about them, so that's one of the reasons that I chose to, make this documentary.
Right, and if you're not familiar yet, which you should be, what we're talking about basically is the documentary itself addresses the diversity in gaming, and we're talking about the different stigmatisms that certain people, certain groups have to deal with in trying to be labeled a gamer, but yet they're labeled something else first. And it's a really interesting topic because I've seen it. I've had experiences with it myself. There in my hometown, there is a couple of people combating it in their own way, and it's becoming a. I don't want to say it's becoming a thing. I think what it is, people are becoming more aware of it. One of the biggest things is I truly believe that most gamers at heart are good people, and I don't believe they intend it. But it happens. And I think it's innocent that it happens, but I think people don't realize that they're doing it. I don't think people realize that they are singling people out, that they're drawing attention to the fact that this person may be African American or this person may be female or whatever, and therefore they're going to question their validity to be a gamer. But it does happen. So yeah, I think that was the thing that really drew me to the documentary. Is I'd seen it, but I never truly acknowledged it as a big issue. And then after watching that and starting to think about all those times where I'd seen that happen, I was like, holy crap, this happens way more than I'd like to admit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
So
what is your background in gaming? Like, you've been in the army. I imagine that you don't play D&D in the army, right? That would be kind of cool.
Well, I actually played Shadowrun a couple times in the army.
Sweet!
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
there you go, go squaddies.
But yeah, so what is your general background? Like, when did you start playing, and
I started
what did
with
you play?
D&D in the kind of mid '90s, and stuck with D&D for a long time, and eventually, played Shadowrun as well, and back to various forms of D&D and Star Wars role-playing games, and eventually, kind of, in the last couple of years, I've been getting into a lot of like indie role-playing games. I actually helped produce the Kickstarter videos for Night Witches and The Warren, which is a game about rabbits.
What's strange is we need to put you in contact with somebody. Thinking about that, because we're working with we've kind of formed a partnership with this is completely off topic but yet not, with a company that they've released their first game, and they went about it the old-fashioned way, raised money, created investors, and financed and published their product, and they're fixing to go into a second edition of the game. And they're going to Kickstarter it, and they're looking for people to help that happen. So there might be a cross tie in here between guests. So that would be kind of cool.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
So but yeah. So how long have you been gaming? When did you start?
So
You don't
maybe
have to give your age.
1996 or so. So 20 years, if I'm doing the math right. Yeah.
Man, I feel old. So there you go. Yeah, you've played, as you said, you've played a lot of. You're not a Puritan in the gaming world. You've played everything, right?
Yeah, I've played all kinds of games. From literally, there are a few games I've played that fit on the business card. The entire text of the role playing game fits on a business card. Everything from there to kind of at the extreme end, Shadowrun with a stack of books this tall, or Pathfinder with a stack of books this tall to go with it for supplemental rules and stuff. So kind of all ends of the spectrum.
Gotcha.
Hopefully.
Well, obviously, Howreroll, we use a virtual tabletop, and our gaming table is the internet. And you've got the diversity here because you've got a British person, you've got Bane, who is Canadian. We have Spook. She's in Texas. Jane Ivana is weird as they could possibly come. She's pretty diverse. She's when you can pin her down. I think currently she's in Cincinnati, and then of course there's Shaggin. Our gaming table is incredibly widespread, but our viewer base are very, very diverse. But one of the things that we kind of talked about before, it's a little different to be part of an online gaming community because you have an invisible wall that protects you from the world. How do you see the growth of online gaming affecting the issues of diversity, and do you see it helping with these issues? Do you think that doing it online like this has a positive effect for people?
I think the inherent or kind of assumed anonymity of gaming online can be both a positive and a negative.
Right.
First, it's a positive in that the people who might otherwise face discrimination don't have to face that discrimination because they get to hide behind a screen name and an icon. They don't have to show their real face. They don't have to, tell people about their gender identity, their sexuality, no one has to see the color of their skin or their national origin.
Right.
So, for the most part, they're protected from those kinds of discrimination. But on the flip side of that, the people who might otherwise discriminate against them, they're never challenged on those kinds of beliefs or those kinds of assumptions because, my mental picture of someone who's, to me, just a screen name on the internet, I don't know about you guys, but trends toward people who look like me. So I'm making bad assumptions when I do that.
Right.
Which means that I'm not challenging my own beliefs about what other gamers are likely to be. So, and I'm sure that's the case for lots of other people too. So,
I personally believe every person that games is a flat
I will
cat.
say that I have made this mistake via Twitch based on preconceived notions. Whenever I see a name, I lean towards them being a male person. And it's not necessarily, like Jessamy, I can kind of assume, there's assumptions you can make and not all of them are good or proper. But I have made this mistake a few times on Howreroll where it's like, how you doing, dude? And they say, well, I'm not a dude. And I'm just like, oh, well, that was insensitive of me. That was wrong. But, it's because you look at statistics and how things have been compiled. The preconceived notion of what a gamer is a male who, as you said, you can see I assume will look like me. So the lack of challenge is definitely an interesting thing, which... Yeah. We don't come across on Twitch as much as I think we should necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, people don't have to address it. It's, when we look at a name, like right now, I see Bloodbender, Milk the Femtor, Jessamy, Parkin Seal, Orochi Ono, just seeing some of these names, and Endless Night. I don't have to visualize anything. They're just who they are. They're viewers. They're part of our community. That simple. If I go as far as to figure out a gender, that literally is the extent of it. I know Jessamy, I know Milk are female. I know Endless, Rock Lobster, Parking Seal are male. Yeah. But when I look up at chat, as I stare up right here, I see this, and all I know is these are part of our community. I don't think about it beyond that. Now, I will be honest, when I walk into a gaming store and see a group of different people, I see guys, young, old, females, young, old. I know some people will look at things and go, attractive, not attractive, personally as in their perspective, and then they're going to see people of different race and stuff like that, and they're going to draw those things as well, and they're going to make those identities. They're going to create that identity in their mind. Over there is a African American young male. Okay, why can't he just be a gamer? That's the thing and I know this is what we're talking about. This is the whole reason we're having the discussion, is because this happens. When you watch the video, you're going to see some things that some of the people that John interviews talk very much about their experiences. And there is a young African-American gamer there. And he talks about the fact that he seems to have no validity when he goes to a conference. This was the thing for me, right? Now stop and think about this. You go to a convention. There is a man sitting behind a screen with a pile of books and a stack of dice ready to run a game. Happens to be African American. Now, does that matter? Do you assume because he's African American he doesn't know anything about gaming? Logic would tell you the man is sitting behind a screen with a pile of books and dice. He's there for a purpose. Someone did not drag him off the street and say, you're going to play this game. You're going to run this game whether you like it or not. He's there because he wants to be. Common sense would tell you the man knows what he's doing. But as the documentary explains and shows, people question him. They ask you, well, do you even know what D&D is? Do you even know how to do this? And it's like, when you stop and think about it logically, you're like, why would anybody ever do that? Yet, it happens time and time again. And as I said, I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and it wasn't really until watching the documentary that it kind of highlighted just how often I've seen it and chose not to see it. I walked past it. I didn't acknowledge it. It wasn't something that mattered to me.
So a little. How did you actually get the people that you interviewed? A little off thing, but Gorbad reminded me of it. Did you do a Craigslist, or you just knew people in the industry? No, how?
I actually met most of them through the gaming communities on Google Plus, actually, and then. A lot of them happen to be attending a convention for game designers, specifically in New Jersey, called Metatopia, and it's a convention where people take games that they're playtesting and that they want to publish in the next year or so, usually. So I was able to, corner a lot of industry people there and talk to also some people who were there as players for the playtests, and get everyone in front of a camera at that time.
Right. When you have to watch the video to understand some of this stuff, but when I, thinking back, one of the things that I really liked was there was a particular gaming convention that tackled this, right? It was created with diversity in mind. You remember the one I'm talking about? There was a guy that was on the video, and they were talking about a particular convention where they'd made a lot of strides to really make sure that they did not, or actually rather the opposite way, not that they did not, but they made sure that they catered very well to diversity. I'm trying to think.
I think that's actually talking about Metatopia, because
Metatopia. There you go. That's the name. Yeah.
Because a couple of the people I interviewed are involved with the Indie Game Developers Network, and they actually set up they worked with the convention organizers to set up a scholarship to help cover people's travel costs and hotel costs, and give them a free badge for the convention.
Right.
So that people from parts of the community that otherwise would have a hard time, making the money, or otherwise, earning the recognition through the normal venues, would be able to attend the convention and, be on panels or get their, game in testing in front of players.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was what, when I watched the interview, that was something that really stood out, was like, okay, there are people that are running conventions that are starting to become very aware and making strides to combat this issue.
Yeah. I didn't actually have a chance to go into everything in the hour-long documentary. I'll put it this way, I was originally planning to make it a 20-minute documentary, but I ended up with so much material, I couldn't cut it below that hour, and honestly, I could have made it 2 hours. I had enough interview material to make it 2 hours.
So, I guess that begs the question, do you have a next step? Do you have a next plan of action, since you did have such a wealth of very interesting and important information and interviews? Do you plan to make it a larger thing and try to distribute it nationally, or what do you got going on?
I'm considering entering the documentary in some convention film festivals, because I know Gen Con and I think Origins and Dragon Con each do a sort of film festival at the convention every year, and they usually have a category for documentaries.
Right.
So I'll probably be trying to enter it in some of those.
Gotcha.
And I'll also be... I'm planning to do a kind of sequel follow-up documentary that goes into a lot more depth about various ways people are already trying to address these problems. Because the first one, I ended up spending a lot of time in the documentary just saying, hey, here's a problem, it's a real problem, this is why it's a problem, and this is why it's bad, even for, us straight white guys. And didn't really get to talk very much about some of the things people are already doing to try to fix the situation.
Gotcha.
So I've got some material already for that, but I'm hoping to do some more interviews and get some more footage and produce kind of a sequel.
I think that's a when you look at it, it's like you did a great job in the documentary, but clearly there's room to go deeper with this. I think there's other avenues for sure. And was it the fact that you are a gamer? Is it the fact that it was gaming orientated, or was it the diversity issue that kind of flipped the card to say, I want to do this?
It's a little bit of both, because I've been a gamer since I was a teenager, basically. And my wife recently, I say recently, I mean more than a decade ago now, got into gaming and tabletop role-playing. Actually, she's probably more into it than I am, actually. And certainly more successful, on the business side of things. She's actually written for some people. But she even faced, and still faces occasionally, the kind of prejudice I talk about in the documentary.
Right.
So the fact that it's an activity that I really like and that she really likes, but sometimes she can't just sit down at a table with strangers without getting looks and getting treated differently for no reason other than the fact that she's a girl. That bothered me. So I decided that, in addition to the conversations that were going on in the online communities I'm a part of, got me thinking about the issue, and that got me wanting to tell people about the issue. And the only way I knew to tell people about the issue is to let them see it in the words of the people who are actually affected by it.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So since you uploaded the video, have you noticed any changes in the gaming community that you have been a part of, like the conventions you've gone to? Hopefully any positive changes, like people who've seen it or it raised awareness in them, so they said to you, do a private message, hopefully saying, hey, I'm going to try to incorporate what you had to say and what the documentary was about.
I've got a handful.
I'm hopeful.
I've got a handful of comments and private messages saying stuff like that, but for the most part, the portion of the community I'm a part of is already kind of trying to address these things. So I haven't. That's one of the things that got me thinking about it, because I knew that the people who are already facing those issues hadn't had it, were already trying to fix it themselves, basically. Right. So I wanted to give them an opportunity to magnify their efforts. So I haven't seen a big change, but I only filmed it. I did most of the filming and interviews in October, so
still early.
It hasn't been that long. I haven't been to another convention since, so maybe we'll see.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing is it's got to get out there. It's got to be pushed out to the masses. People have got to realize it. I'd mentioned this to you before. So the most powerful experience that I've seen is here in town. We have 3 potential gaming hangouts. Okay, one of which is I won't tell you where it is. I won't name it. But it's a gaming store that is run by a lesbian couple. And they had experienced a whole bunch of stigma because not only are you a girl, but you're gay. So already you have a huge issue there. So they opened their own gaming store and set up a ton of gaming tables, and they run it. So it is like a diversity neutral place because you walk through the door and the people that are in charge already are dealing with the problem because they're like, hey, you know what? This is for everybody. There is no, there are no boundaries here. There are no borders here. And when you go into their establishment, you're the guest, and if you walk in with anything other than an accepting mentality, you're the guy that's going to turn around and walk out. They're not leaving. And because of that, I think this is how they're combating it in their own way. But I've heard them discuss things and talk in the store about experiences and what a challenge it is for them. And they generally discuss more about what a challenge it is to be considered a legitimate gamer as a female than they do from their sexual orientation. And I mean, with all the interviews, I mean, would you say that that's probably prevalent for most people, or do you think that being female is a tougher thing to overcome than being gay or being a lesbian or something like that? Do you think that the female thing is a big diverse issue?
I think it presents as a bigger problem because it's more immediately visible.
Right.
So, I can look at someone and say, and make an assumption that, they're gendered female based on how they look, how they dress, whatever.
Right.
But I can't, you can make assumptions based on the way people dress, but you're going to be wrong a lot of the time about someone's actual sexuality. But sometimes you're wrong about their gender as well. But you can very visibly see that most women are women, or
right.
most men are men, and so it's a lot easier to stereotype someone on their gender. It's a lot easier to react negatively or poorly to their gender than it is to their sexuality, because you're generally not seeing that unless they bring it out in some way.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, Jane's finally showed up, look. Hey, what's up, Jane? So, I mean, the cons that you've been to. So tell us your observations when you go to an actual con, when you go to a Dragon Con, a Gen Con, or whatever. I mean, is this something that you noticed off the bat, or have you only really sort of noticed it more since you've been more involved with a community that addresses it?
I've definitely noticed it more since I've been involved in a community that actually thinks about these subjects. The first time I went to Origins, I didn't really consciously notice that it's nearly all guys and nearly all white.
Right.
I didn't notice that. That never made it all the way into the conscious parts of my brain. So, but now that I've been thinking about those issues, the last time I went to Origins, for instance, I thought about that when I was on the convention floor walking past all the vendors, and part of my brain was thinking, this place would probably be cooler with more women and more people of who have different backgrounds from me, so that
right.
they're going to bring something cool and different to this situation than I would, because everyone has these sort of unique experiences that make them interesting. So I'm looking for more of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was the same for me. I think when I think back to going back in the past when I was doing Gen Con work for Loughborough University in England, I never really stopped to think beyond that. But you're right. 95% of everybody there was a white male. There were a few girls, but even most of the girls back then were girlfriends tagging along. The only exception to the group was the cosplayers. There was a lot of female cosplayers, which back then it wasn't even called cosplaying. It was, basically RPG dress up, I guess. Cosplay is a more newer term, but that was more prevalent, and I think that was one of the things that a lot of the females used to enjoy expressing their love for gaming. In that sense, the way they would dress, the way they would go way up and above and beyond to come up with a really authentic costume than a lot of the guys would. But back then, I feel like that was their way of expressing themselves in a gaming environment because they really didn't have the opportunities because no one did take them seriously back then. And now we see things change. And look at BlizzCon. BlizzCon, there's a lot of females at BlizzCon. A lot. Oh, yeah. And I notice now that, yeah, for sure, there are more and more gamers that are coming out and saying, hey, you know what? I'm a chick. 3 out of 5. So, hey, on Howreroll, the girls have got the majority. There's only me and Shagget, and we got 3 girl players. That wasn't by design. That's just how it happened. So there's definitely a stronger push today towards this, but one of the things that me and you talked about is when you as a girl walk in the gaming store and it's full of guys and they all stop and look at you. I'm trying to think of what the correct term was, but there was a girl that you interviewed and she what was it she called it?
It was a nerd stare.
The nerd stare, right. Which is like when all the other nerds look at you and you can feel them judging you based on who you are, what you are, this, that, and the other. And how she had to try to overcome that. And the problem is, typically when you walk as a female, or anybody that we're going to consider a gaming minority, okay? You walk into the store and you see the horde of white guys and they look at you, and then you glance around and there is nobody else that's a chick. There is no other African American, there's no other Chinese guy. You instantly feel singled out, and if they don't immediately open their arms and welcome you, you leave. And then the next person comes in and experiences the same thing, and the next person comes in and experiences the same thing. And for the store owner, and he has to become more welcoming. He has to break this mold and pray that one day he can get 3 or 4 girls in his store at the same time, so the next girl that comes in looks around and says, there's quite a few girls here. This is okay. You mentioned there was one particular store where you live, which this fascinated me. The one that you had to go down the flight of stairs. Yeah. Explain that experience to people. Like, tell them about that.
So there's like 3 dedicated gaming stores in the geographic area where I live, and one of them is a great store with a great selection of things you can buy and everything, but it just so happens that they're kind of on the end of a shopping center, and you go in and you have to go down this sort of poorly lit stairwell like 2 floors down into the basement, which is where their actual store is and the play area is. And they've got a huge space with tons of tables and tons of ability to play games. But the fact that you have to go down this like dark, dirty stairwell, and they've got these posters all over the stairwell with like half naked girls and everything. So a woman who walks in there is going to see this stairwell, see the way it's decorated. Yeah. And think, I'm not going to find out what's at the bottom of this stairwell because I'm not going to make it down there safely. Right. I'm just going to turn around and leave. And I know that partly because the first time that my wife and I went there, she's like, "This seems really sketchy." Now, she toughed it out. She went down there. We bought some stuff, and we talked to the people down there. But it's really, it's really creepy, honestly.
But the truth is, John, would she have done it if you had not been there?
Probably not. She probably would have said, "You know what? I know there's another gaming store 2 miles from here. I'm just going to get back in the car and go there."
Exactly.
I had a friend who operated a card game shop in Cleveland, Ohio. Not the best neighborhood, but not the worst either. And it was, the front of it was the basic, glass partitions and shelves with cards and sleeves. And, there were Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Star Wars. And it had a gaming space in the back where you could play D&D, you could play Shadowrun or Pathfinder or any tabletop game, Warhammer 40K. It had a PlayStation, some computers so you could League of Legends. And you go back there, and I visited for a week. And even I felt like, well, this is like a frat boy's basement, and it wasn't in the basement, but it definitely wasn't comfortable feeling. It was like, this is where guys sit and eat Doritos and drink beer and play video games and just lounge backwards. And even I, a white male, was like, really? Like, this is how you're going to present your business to cater to these desires and influences? Like, no wonder it was just all guys in there, white guys no less. And they were all friends of each other. But it definitely was not welcoming even to me, because,
Right.
It just surprised me. I was taken aback. Like, this is how it's operated? Really? I get shudders thinking about it now.
Yeah, it's... when I ran a gaming store back in the UK, it was on a high street, it was well lit, you walked in and you had the main store, but even we had... I'd never even thought about it this way before, but even we had a shady little staircase that you had to go up and round into a dimly lit area, and then there was this weird wooden door halfway up the stairs that you opened and stepped into the gaming room, right? And at no point in the past did I ever think how this room was uninviting to anybody other than the typical gamer that didn't care. And now, now I stop and think about this and think, well, it's no wonder half the people never wanted to go up there. Because it's the very fact that as you start to ascend the stairs, you go probably about 20 steps with virtually no light. So it's like, where am I going? What's happening? What's going to happen at the top of the stairs? I'm scared. I can see the little 11 and 12-year-old gamer, and as little Timmy ascends the stairwell, Mommy's at the bottom, and he's like, "Mommy, I'm scared. Come back, Timmy, come back." It's like I can see it now, but at the time, didn't enter my head. Didn't stop to think any of that.
It feels normal, but when you're a person who has to worry about their physical safety in a lot of situations, like women get followed, they get beat up, they get assaulted. So when you're primed to think about your physical safety and you see a place that doesn't look like it's made with your physical safety in mind,
right,
you're going to be more likely than other people to back away from that situation.
Exactly. And of course, when you have to deal with diversity anyway, anything like that you're presented with just magnifies the problem. It's just like, not only are the people not seemingly welcoming, but the environment that I'm stepping into is hostile as well. So honestly, why would you? Why would you push the boundary? Why would you try to fight through all of that diversity to get recognized and acknowledged as a legitimate gamer and force people to make you feel welcome? Nobody, as a general rule of thumb, humanity in general, if we do not feel welcomed, there are very few times that we will tough it out and try to impose ourselves on a group of people and say, "You're going to accept me, damn it." Doesn't happen.
Yeah. And it's a crying shame that that's the case. I mean, I think about all of the perspective and strangeness and awesomeness that can be infused in a gaming session when you have a diverse group that you play with makes the game so much more fun. Right. I mean, Jane and I are very different players, but when she does something that I wouldn't even think as an option to do, my experience is further enriched because I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Now this whole situation's turned on its head. How would my character, as a cleric, react to said situation? And it is those moments that make me truly happy. Because after the game session ends, I as me, Shagget or Alex, I'm thinking, that was awesome. That was great. Because the perspective was different, and there was an opportunity for it to be different. Right. And yes, Jane, that was a compliment to you, even though I hate your character. But I love you. Kia, though.
We haven't actually got to the official Q&A for John yet, but we're about to. But I want to, in case it gets missed, I'm watching our chat. Okay. So Milk the Femtor said, sometimes I find it uncomfortable to even go into a GameStop. Jessamy said, me too. Then Jess said, yeah, I can feel completely comfortable walking into a Hot Topic. Now, to me, that right there pretty much said it all. If you stop and think about what they're saying, Hot Topic is a pretty, pretty out there type of store. And you can see reasons why people could be, or girls could be intimidated for going there, yet they're not. And then a simple, harmless gaming store is an intimidation. How did that happen? I mean, you see, how did we allow that as a society to occur? It doesn't really make sense to me. But yet, it is a prevalent thing. This is something that has occurred. And, I mean, John, do you think that, what we mentioned before, do you think truly it's just unintentional ignorance?
I think the majority of it is going to be unintentional. I think, as you said earlier, I think the majority of gamers are, good people, and a lot of us just don't know any better, who, in our own personal experiences, the majority of other gamers we've seen or played with just happen to be people who are mostly like us for a wide variety of reasons.
Right.
When someone who is different walks into the room, tries to sit down at the table, our brain isn't equipped yet to handle that, because we have a mental model of what a gamer is. And when someone who doesn't fit our mental model comes down and wants to play with us or is interested in what we're doing, we have to adjust our mental model in order to kind of fit them into what a gamer is. And really what we should be doing is, constantly adjusting our mental model of what a gamer is and making it as broad a description as possible. So it should be a human who is interested in these games.
Right, yes.
Rather than, and I say that out loud, and that's, what I hope mine is, but I know I'm going to constantly encounter new people who are different from other gamers I've encountered before, and I'm going to have to adjust the actual mental model that lives in my brain and not just the words I say.
Right.
Again.
All right, well, we've asked some questions of you. Do you have anything you want to throw at us? Did you have any questions regarding anything we do, or anything game-related for me or the Shagmeister?
No, not really.
Okay.
I did see in your chat someone mentioned gaming in a library and how they found that more comfortable because of the layout.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually a really good idea. And I've known people that do that. I know a bunch of librarians, actually, and some of them actually work on getting their libraries stocked with role-playing game books and materials.
Right.
So if you want to play at a local library, ask your librarian. They might be able to get you some books and everything that you can check out at the library.
Well, we're going to show it. We're going to throw it open to our chat viewers. So viewers in chat, if you've got any questions for John, throw them out. Junk Farmer has the first one. He says, was it difficult to convince people to give the interviews?
Yeah, a few people were were reluctant to go on camera for a lot of the reasons that people are usually reluctant to go on camera.
Right.
Don't like being filmed, don't like the way they look or sound. But for the most part, everyone I talked to was happy to do the interviews.
Gotcha. I mean, you had a pretty good you got a pretty good cross reference of people. Was that by design, or was that just the group of people that happened to step up and say, "Yeah, we'll talk"?
That was mostly by design. I specifically didn't want to interview too many people who look and sound just like me. So
right.
I made it a point to seek out people who had participated in the community and didn't look like me, so that I can make sure that that they're giving their own firsthand accounts and not relying on relating what other people said or what they've seen happen to other people, so that they're talking about what happened to them, so that
right.
The viewer knows that this is the real thing. This isn't being filtered through multiple layers of people's memories and editorial ideas.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, as I said, my only personal experience with diversity in gaming comes from the very stigma of gaming itself back in the early days when D&D itself had a smell about it. It was you had the religious groups hated it, parents hated it, and if you did play it, you were immediately labeled a geek, a nerd, or whatever, and were shunned, so you didn't tell anybody. That's one of those things that we experienced, but then we're fortunate to where most of that is gone now. It's an okay thing to do, it's an okay topic, it's an okay subject, it's an okay hobby. But unfortunately, there are more things that keep overshadowing that, which are all worse. Milk says, I hope he's ready, Gore, for my question. Okay, Endless Night says, Okay, John, have you ever found the opposite to be a thing? All one gender or race other than white males, not allowing white and or males to play. So in other words, have you seen it on the opposite way, where you've seen potentially diverse groups shunning the norm? That's an interesting question.
Not the completely banned white guys, but I know there are some events. There's an event called Contessa that they run some tables at Gen Con every year, but they also do an online convention every year in the spring, I think in February usually.
Right.
And all of the events are run by women. So women are running all the games, they're running all the panels. But you still have a lot of, guy players at the table, you still have a lot of guys, all on the panels, they're just not moderating the panel discussions.
So it's a female organized, but it doesn't exclude.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
So I've never really seen something that completely excludes kind of your stereotypical gamers.
Well, I can see that, because if you're feeling like you're being excluded, it's a strange thing to then want to exclude others. Most people don't say, well, this is not fair, you're excluding us, so we're going to exclude you. Normally it's the other way. It's like, what, we want to show you why you shouldn't do this. We don't want to be that guy. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so here's Milk the Femtor's inevitable question. John, hi, how are you? Question I ask all of our guests. Boxers, briefs, boxer briefs, or other, please specify.
Boxers usually, occasionally commando.
There you go. There you go. Boxers usually, occasionally commando. The most important question of the night answered. Let's have a look from. Now, when we're talking, Rock Lobster says, now when we're talking gaming, do you mean just tabletop? Because I know a lot of competitive video games, especially fighting games, are starting to be swarmed by younger black males.
The only thing I have any kind of personal experience with is tabletop games, and that includes, role-playing games and some board games and strategy games, but mostly tabletop games. I used to spend long days in the arcade in front of, throwing quarters into fighting game machines, especially like Tekken Tag tournament and everything.
Right.
But I haven't really kept up with that scene, and I couldn't really speak to that with any kind of authority.
Okay. Azukio says, what do you think events like Gen Con could do to be more inclusive? Should they choose more diverse DMs and players for games run at their cons, as an example?
Yeah, that's a good... I think that's a good way to start, but part of the issue is it's not a matter of necessarily just choosing that, because most of the people who are running those games and events are volunteers.
Right.
So you have to get people who are willing to volunteer, and that's already kind of self-selecting
right?
toward,
Right.
toward white and male, and especially at places like Gen Con where it's so expensive to attend. If you're attending for like all 4 or 5 days, that's $1,000 for the hotel,
Right.
plus whatever it took you to travel there, plus the actual convention tickets. So you're necessarily already limiting your pool of available GMs and everything that way, usually to more middle-class white guys.
Right.
So one of the ways they could probably get more diverse people running games and running events is by making specific invitations and doing things to make it easier for people in those groups to actually attend. So if and whether that means helping them with the cost of their convention tickets, maybe helping them, finding them discounted rates on the hotel stay, just
Right.
helping people who otherwise would think, this is not a great situation for me. I'm going to face some hostility no matter what. So why am I going to spend $1,500 or $2,000
Right.
on the weekend to go? So, but suddenly, if Gen Con is able to help them with some of the costs, and now it's only $500, they're still going to face some of that hostility, but maybe $500 is worth it.
Right.
For all the upsides of that.
Yeah. That makes sense. Our very own Jay Nirvana has a question. She says, John, when editing your documentary, how did you decide what was the most important interview snippets were in order to get the message across you were trying to convey? And then she followed it up by saying, well, I totally butchered that sentence. Oh, well. Yeah, when editing your documentary, how did you decide what the most important snippets were? How did you kind of vet them to get the message across that you were trying to deliver?
Okay, well...
To preface that, the reason I say that, Jane is also a YouTuber and does a lot of the similar sort of stuff, so she has a creative interest in what you did, because she loved the video as well.
Well, I have, as I said, I have some kind of professional experience doing news and documentary style footage, so I have some kind of experience building a narrative out of quotes like that. But basically what I did was I listened back to every interview that I did, and there were probably 5 or 6 that didn't even make it in at all into the documentary. Most of them are about half an hour long, so I listened to each of them 2 or 3 times so that I became really familiar with all of the material that I had. And then I sort of mentally came up with a very simple structure that I wanted the documentary to follow. And that structure is, part 1 is what's the problem? Part 2 is why is it a problem for everyone? And part 3 is what can we do about the problem? So
Gotcha.
then I would just look back into those interviews that I did for sound bites that really fit well into those categories, and then kind of felt good one after the other. And that's how I sort of built the whole thing.
Gotcha. Cool. Stacy DePro says, what do you think about Will Wheaton's promotion of the tabletop games via Geek and Sundry and his YouTube series? Could this contribute to inclusiveness, or at least introduce games to a new gamer?
I think it's great. I mean, I discovered a few games on his tabletop show.
You and me both.
Yeah, I think it's doing a great service to the community. I can't really speak directly to how to diversity impacts it might have, because again, I like it, but I'm another white guy,
Right.
just like Will Wheaton. But he does have plenty of women guests on his show. He's had quite a few non-white guests on his show.
Oh, absolutely,
And
yeah.
having them there playing the games, being treated exactly the way they treat everyone else, I think is a good example for the way the rest of our community should behave.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I agree. I mean, I think you know, I've watched a lot of those shows, and you do see a huge cross-reference of society there. So that's true. Aseg says, do you think media plays into some of the stigma against minority gamers, such as how tabletop gamers are portrayed on TV and movies?
Definitely. There's actually a sociological concept called stereotype threat, where if you... It's going back to the mental model thing, where if your mental model of a particular role or type of person or activity, if that doesn't include you, then when you try to do that thing, you're going to be more nervous and you're not going to perform as well at it as you would if you didn't have a mental model that was working against you.
Right.
So if you're not what the media says a gamer looks like, so you're already going to be nervous going into that game store. You're already going to be nervous sitting down to play your first role-playing game, because we've absorbed these messages about what a normal gamer or normal person who does whatever is.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're going to have a harder time just because you have to overcome these kind of, cultural models about what we're expecting
So
of
the
ourselves.
media has pushed the stereotype, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're individually susceptible to these stereotypes that are made about us.
Right. Junk Farmer has a really good question, and we've got a couple more that are sitting up here. So after Lord Boo's question, we're going to wrap it up. But Junk Farmer's question is, are cons, and I like this question, are cons getting better at enforcing their harassment policies? I believe you might have touched on this in your video.
I don't know that I can speak to that kind of across the board, but I know that there are certainly a lot of small conventions that take their harassment policies very seriously.
Right.
And I think some of the bigger conventions they might be getting better at that, but honestly, I don't know with any specificity. I couldn't give you any sort of statistics about them getting better or worse.
Gotcha.
But I know that, like, Big Bad Con in Seattle, I think Oakland, San Francisco area, goes out of their way to make sure that their policies are followed. Metatopia and Double Exposure Convention in New Jersey similarly has a policy and makes sure it's enforced up front. So.
Gotcha. Lord Boo says, you were mentioning the higher barrier of entry for finding people in order to go to these conventions and helping people to go to them. How much of the diversity issue in gaming do you think has to do with this economic aspect of gaming rather than simply race, gender, etc.? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, but it's hard to actually separate those things. You can separate gender more easily than race and sexual orientation and gender presentation because,
like you said before, it's more apparent, it's obvious.
Right, but also people who are not white are just statistically more likely to be poor. People who are not straight are statistically more likely to be poor because it's harder for them to find good paying jobs.
Right.
Just because the rest of our society...
Because of the other diversity issues that they combat outside of the gaming world.
Exactly.
Right.
So just these other pressures on them make it less likely that they're going to be able to afford to go to these $2,000 for a weekend conventions. But even without the economic component, I still think that there's a real issue that they're facing, because those who do have the money and do attend are, for instance, they're the ones I managed to interview. I think one of the people I interviewed that made it into the documentary was there on the IGDN scholarship, but the rest of them had paid their own way to Metatopia.
Right.
And they were talking about having faced these same kinds of problems. So it's definitely not all the economic issue, but it's hard to completely separate that from the other issues.
Cool. Final question. I know I said that Booze was, but Voodoo Magic Man threw one in right as I said that, and I hate to cut anybody out. His question was, would you ever consider doing a follow-up documentary, say 10 or 15 years later, big plans here, John, to explore the state of diversity and acceptance in the gaming communities? I guess it's like, this is what I found here, this is what I see now.
I would love to be able to do that. hopefully, I'll still be making videos, and the community will have improved significantly. So I would love to be able to do that.
Cool. All right, so guys, if you have not yet done so, make sure you click on that link. Go check out the documentary that John did on the diversity of gaming. Go ahead and subscribe to him on YouTube, because there's other stuff there that's worth looking at as well, trust me. And that way also, as he does follow-up pieces and does more and more, gaming-related stuff, you can watch and enjoy that as well. So, I thoroughly encourage you, definitely go there and watch that YouTube video. You will not waste an hour of your time. Trust me when I say that. And then, as I said, follow and subscribe him on, follow him and subscribe to him on YouTube. Give him a thumbs up. Let him know that you guys went and checked it out, and you enjoyed the content that's there. And that way, you're opening yourselves up to be able to see more content in the future. So, thank you so much for joining us, John. It was really enlightening and interesting to talk to you today. And hopefully, all of our viewers that are watching can take something away from this. And if nothing else, can be more aware of it. So when they go to cons, when they go to gaming stores, wherever they are, to be more aware and not make the mistakes that people have made in the past and ask the stupid questions of the potential diversity groups, and just accept them for the fact that they are here at a con. Clearly they have an interest. Clearly they have a knowledge base. Or why would they be here? So don't make those judgments, guys. Just try to continue the love and the way that our community, Milk said it earlier, the community that we have doesn't care. There is no diversity here. Nobody does. Everybody loves equally. Everybody is part of this community. It doesn't matter who you are. Just take that mentality and allow it to go into the gaming industry, into the gaming world, wherever you are, whether it's at a con, whether it's at a gaming store, whether it's staring half the time I talk to people about gaming in Books a Million as I peruse the D&D manuals because I'm bored, and a guy will sit next to me and he's perusing the D&D manuals because he's bored, and a conversation strikes up. The very fact that he holds a D&D manual in his hand means I'm going to talk to him or her regardless. I don't look to the left and then say, well, that's an African American female. She can't possibly be interested in D&D. She's clearly picked up this manual by mistake. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's when you stop and think about it, a lot of these diversity issues, with that ounce of common sense, should never ever be raised. Yet it happens. So, thanks again for joining us. We'll talk again because we mentioned before about the possibility of doing a follow-up interview on this and maybe talking to some of the people that were in the interview. Me and you will talk to see what we're going to do about that, and see if this is going to be a thing. But as I said, thank you so much for being here. Chat, if you will, just thank John for showing up and giving us just over an hour of his valuable time. The poor man is starving hungry. I know he is. And I checked that impressive beard, and I don't see an ounce of food in it that he can possibly use for sustenance at a later date. So the man's got to go and get himself some quality food. So thank you for that. Throw some rollies out there, throw some hype out there, do whatever you guys need to do. But yeah, there you go. Everyone's saying thank you. We're really
thank you, John.
Glad that you showed up.
Thanks for having me on.
And you're very welcome. So we're going to let John sneak out of here and go do his thing. Appreciate it, man. And we're going to continue with the second part of our show tonight, which is the more stereotypical stuff. I'm going to just alter this slightly. And we're not going to do the Monster Mayhem because we really don't have time. But what the what?
What the what?
Sub-hype. Okay, so let me quickly recapture a Shagget. Let me throw my Pokeball out. Pokemon!
Oh yeah, it zoomed in on me. Rawr.
Yes, indeed.
What's up, guys?
Guest cam properties. Capture the Shagget. Here we go.
We don't need no stinking monster mayhem.
We don't need no
Sembra.
stinking tacos. All right. Yeah, we're gonna save that for a later date. There he is. Alrighty. So, thanks again to our special guest. I really like having people on to talk about stuff that is, it's
Well, especially people who are like making a difference in the world for the better, and raising issues and a conversation that needs to happen for tabletop gaming, but also gaming in general. It's like makes me think, well, what have I done to improve the state of things?
show up here week after week,
but that's not
and be
insane,
part
man.
of our stuff that we do.
That hour-long documentary is so much more than a year of me showing up here. Let's be
You
real.
definitely need to watch it, guys, if you haven't done so. But let's move on and head into our next segment.
Adventure Recap.
The Adventure Recap, where Shagget does his absolute best to butcher the recap in less than 10 minutes. Are you ready, sir? Go.
Yeah. All right. It's like this, guys. Radovan
We're looking
Rainier,
for a lady. Sorry.
the cleric, and Reza, the half-elven rogue, who's actually the illegitimate daughter of the King Marcus of Iridian, grouped up again with Keeliana because Keeliana had found out where Rorchek was, the half-orc that had terrorized us in the Marks of Entry campaign, and basically terrorized Keeliana in her past. We grouped up, we killed the bastard, we killed all the orcs assembled there, and we freed a monk by the name of Marlo Raphael. Is it Raphael? Is that her last name? No.
It is, yes.
We escorted some other prisoners of war that had been with Marlo to Finnerton. One of them was Lady Harrington. Lord Harrington had an issue where the Mastercraft shields that the blacksmith of Finnerton was making was being mysteriously vanished from shipments that had been sent to King Marcus in Iridian. In our investigation, we discovered that the Mastercraft shields were being stolen by this guy, this rogue wizard, who had been hired by these strange otherworldly people that we later found out to be the Gith Zari. The Gith Zari had been displaced by the Drakkar Yunki, which is an offshoot of the Gith Yunki. They had lost their citadel, and you wanted the shields to armor up and take the citadel back. We took this news to the King Marcus, and Tadros the Vizier, who some people in the party don't trust at all, but we can talk about that a little bit later. And essentially, King Marcus, finding out that there was an army being built to the northeast from Istarden, which is another human settlement that had been butchered by the Drakkar Yunki, hired the party, Marlo, Reza, Kia, and Radovan, to accrue and find allies to join the cause, to join the war effort. During this, Radovan Rainier became a war priest of St. Cuthbert. He joined the Topaz Order. Radovan Rainier had a vision of the war culminating essentially in, he interprets it as his death. Like the last huzzah in the war, in the front lines. The first stop, the party went and met with the Gith Zari in the swamps to a little bit to the southwest of Iridian, essentially, in the swamplands. A tentative alliance was struck when Radovan and Reza negotiated their asses off and went from being regarded as fodder to be killed to fodder to be killed, but in a war situation as an alliance. That was fun because the Githzerii doesn't regard humans as anything more than beneath him, essentially.
Right.
Radovan gave his shield as a sign of good faith, and that helps bolster their opinion of Radovan and company. because, let's be frank, Radovan's the best. He's awesome. He's amazing. I'm kidding, of course. Then we were sent to the elves far to the east. I said southwest before, it's actually southeast, but yeah, far to the east. And the grandfather of who's dying, who's an old elf, like an older elf, is actually the grandfather of Raysa. Throughout all of this, Raysa has kept her identity secret. Tadros the Vizier knows about it, but still sent them anyway. That diplomacy did not succeed. The elves were like, I was going to execute you guys for this, but, because of Raysa's mother, who's his daughter, I'm going to banish you forthwith. A note was given to Raysa to be delivered to the king by her mom, which essentially will give away the fact that Raysa is the illegitimate daughter. That's up in the air about what's going to happen there. The party returned to the king, essentially saying, "Hey, we failed with the elves, but we're sorry. And what are we going to do?" The king ordered the party to stay in Iridian while the War Council convened and talked about the situation and about the fact that Rockhelm to the north had been emptied, that the Harns Plains tribe and the Harrier tribe of women had been decimated, and that the Scarbloods had actually joined the Dracarionki, which is not good, and that they were going to continue rampaging to the south. Meanwhile, the party, Marlowe, it was met by this strange woman who seemed to be a fan of hers, with this plots that had to do with the Clarenson sisters. The Clarenson sisters had previously tangoed with Marlowe. They're evil bitches who essentially used her to enact an ends in the Colosseum that is being held in Iridian. And basically this woman, Amira, said, "Hey, let's thwart the Clarenson sisters' plan and possibly end corruption in Iridian," and so of course the party went along with it. But then maybe that wasn't what happened, because a note was found by Radovan that was read by everybody else that had other information, and that's where we left off, trying to find the truth of this seemingly setup that Amira did for Marlowe, Raysa, Kia, and Radovan.
There you go.
What?
So, as I said, just impromptu, because we appreciate everybody that shows up for Dialogues and Dice. We know it's not a play show, but just like everything else, it needs your love, it needs your support. It's something that we enjoy doing. We try to do something a little bit different. We're trying to bring you guys some interesting special guests and stuff like that. So we very much appreciate everybody that does show up. And although we never announced it, if you would like to, you can win a $20 Steam gift card. Entry cost is $100. You can enter up to 1,000 times if you want to. I don't care. But if you would like to win that Steam gift card, you have 5 minutes right now. Type in !enter, and then the number of entries that you want to do. You know how it works. So go ahead and throw in your entries. And the number that you put, so !enter space 10 will enter you 10 times. It will not allow you to enter more times than you have gold. So make sure you have the gold pieces to enter. But it's 100 gold, so most of you should have that available to you right now. If you've squandered and pissed all your money away, then I'm sorry. But it's a $20 Steam gift card that you guys can go ahead and enter. And you can enter as many times as you want.
Stop being stingy. Enter more times.
You've got massive amounts of gold,
You have
woman.
17,000 gold, and you're only spending 1,000 of it? Please. What?
There you go. You got 3 minutes and 45 seconds left to continue to enter, as we're going to give you stuff. A measly 100 gold for a $20 Steam gift card. Spend your points if you have Steam. If you don't have Steam, and you have no intention of ever getting Steam, then I guess you don't want it. But if you do, throw it in there.
I just got to say, Steam has been ticking me off lately.
Really? Why has it been ticking you off?
They keep updating, and updating requires a Steam restart, which requires me to input my password. And then that requires, since I have a two-way security with my Steam Guard, I have to put in this digit combination number to verify myself. And it's just like, stop updating so much, Steam. Just do one big update once a month.
Steam protects my account, which means I have more work to do. First world problems.
Damn you!
Oh. Well, we have a ton of entries coming in for this thing. Woohoo! So get them in there.
First world Shagget problems.
First world Shagget problems, indeed.
Enter, people, enter.
Indeed. Get your entries in.
Keep in mind, guys, we do have other goodies planned for giveaway
We do.
purposes,
We have a lot of... I mean, we're always doing giveaways. So if you don't win it today, just keep on. The biggest thing is, of course, you just have to be here and view and hang out with us. And you accumulate your gold pieces. That's what they're for. If you're looking at people that have an incredible amount, there's two reasons they have them. The biggest reason is they're always here. They watch, they entertain, they're part of the show. And some of them are just really lucky when they do dungeon raids. But the biggest part of it, you know, you can win a few extra gold here, you can win a few extra gold here, but the real way to get your gold pieces is to watch the show, be part of the group.
I guess while we wait, should we do the donation that Floto did?
Well,
I mean, we should redo it, right?
Well, that actually was from, unless he threw another one in there, that was from yesterday.
Yeah.
But I usually leave the donation up again from Monday because it's like another way of saying, "Hey, thanks, dude." Oh, actually, no, he did do a second donation. He did.
Oh.
And it says, "Thanks for this topic." So thank you, dude. I don't know why it didn't show up. Maybe I didn't start the donation alert. Maybe. Bet that's what it is. But anyway, he did, and we've thanked you. So,
my name is said, can I ask your thoughts on a variant to the Ranger class or Scout class?
There you go. Yeah, it's up now. There, it just updated. All right, let's have a look. Where was that? Say that again.
Can I ask your thoughts on a variant to the Ranger class or Scout class?
Of course you can. You have to be more specific than just ask our thoughts, though. What do you mean?
It showed up that you were mid-conversation with John Kessler. Okay. Gore, that donation was thanks for having the guy on with the video. That topic was rad. That's what Floto said.
Yeah, I got it. I saw it finally.
Okay, who won?
Alrighty, so let's see who is the lucky recipient of that gift card. Let's see here. Where's mine? Neo Gambit. There you go. Neo is the lucky winner. I will message you the Steam gift card code within the next 24 hours. I'm not going to promise I'm going to do it tonight because I got a lot of stuff to do, but I will get it to you. So, Neo, it is yours, my friend.
Congrats, Neo, man.
Neo Gambit.
A hard victory that was.
You know, this is what we're talking about. This is why a lot of gold pays off, because he spent a bunch of gold to get that. But it paid off, man. It paid off. My name is at an Omega, or no, my name is at Mano Tomega. Thank you for the follow, buddy. There you go. All right, let's push on to our next segment before we throw it to the wolves and go for some Q&A with you guys. Uh-oh. As we move forward.
Character update.
right, the character update. So, here is where we talk to none other than the War Priest himself, Radovan Rainier. So, Radovan, let's talk about things that happened.
Oh, lordy.
So, the first thing I want to talk about is your thoughts on the whole disaster in we should call it the disaster in Arenafell, the High Elven City. Tell us your thoughts on that whole fiasco.
A part of me... Okay, so I trust the Vizier implicitly. I do. I find it weird that he didn't have an issue with Raysa going, even under disguise. Of course, I also realized that he probably didn't know that the king, the grandfather, who hated her so much, had trained himself recently to look through illusions, right? I mean,
right.
So maybe that wasn't a thing he realized. But it's unfortunate that it happened that way, because there really was no negotiating at play. I mean, there was really just apologies and acceptance. I couldn't find a way to negotiate, be diplomatic. Like with the Githzerai, I had my shield to offer, and that was my last, chance. Hail Mary pass.
And I mean that within itself was a hell of a sacrifice for sure.
Right, but I didn't have that with the elves, mostly because I still think a lot of the things I used to think about elves. I'm aware that it's racist, but at the same time, elves are fucking dicks. I mean, let's be real here. They kind of still are. They're, so the fact that the archer who guided us, I had words with her, but then she ended up being more helpful. I didn't even realize it was the same person, I'll be completely honest. Because all elves look alike. I was like, okay. And then, of course, I had to be more diplomatic with her, even though we butted heads a little bit on the bridge. The properness, the etiquette, the assumptions, the society, I still can't wrap my head around. I don't understand it. I don't get how you could be so old and yet so stupid or nearsighted, in focus on grudges and, sleights of hand when the world is about to get destroyed. I don't know. So I feel it had to happen the way it had to happen, and they just burned a bridge that we tried to extend, and there's nothing we could do about it. Because we weren't the ideal party to do it, honestly.
Right. Well, and as the king said, he sent you, bear in mind, he sent you not knowing about Raysa.
Not knowing about Raysa.
He made the call to send you guys. And and he did that based on your success with the Githzerai. He even said himself, he didn't really expect you to succeed, but he held out hope because you proved to be such great diplomats with the Githzerai. Now, the question, as you said, the question to raise here is, should the Vizier have stepped in? Should he have said something? How would he have said, no, don't send her, without divulging a reason, without lying to the king? It's, there's... The whole thing is a nasty circumstance.
I do understand, impinging your judgment, being influenced by things that might not be in the best interest when you have a war to deal with. But I also think, personally, that it's the time to put all the cards on the table. I mean, if we're all going to die, why should the king be oblivious? And this is why I am on team Raysa should tell the king that she's the daughter sooner rather than later. I don't agree with the Vizier on that front, because if some random person came up to Radovan and said, by the way, I'm your daughter from that illicit affair you had while you were wasted back in the West before you even joined the Marks of Infantry, it wouldn't impinge my ability to make judgments about the war we were in. I would try to foster a relationship with said daughter. I would use the time I had to try to make the best of it. And the fact that the king is just being kept in the dark, I think is a little unfair to the king. Because for all accounts, he seems to be a good man. And it's been confirmed by other people that he's a good guy. And I don't like him being kept in the dark. But of course, it's not my place to say, hey, oh, by the way, she's your daughter. I have to be, it's her choice. But I think she should tell the king, personally.
There you go. So, talking about the Vizier, so we had this debacle. So, here's the thing. And everybody, you have to realize, every character has their own personal agenda. Every character has their own personal viewpoint.
Yeah.
So, we had the incidents where Marlo and Raisa. So, let's start with Raisa. She had the gem, which almost as an afterthought, as you're about to walk in, he's like, incidentally, any chance you manage to get something for me, referring to the gem. Raisa turns to give him the gem, but then said, whispering quietly to you guys, and as chat will confirm, my first roll was a natural 20, so unfortunately he heard it, was, do you trust this guy? Which he then answered, because he overheard it, like, well, I'd hope so. And at the exact same time, Marlo was like, hell no. Yep, now, Raisa whispered, do you trust this guy? Marlo then proclaimed, hell no.
Right. Because he heard it too. Yes.
Right. So he heard both sides to that. Then he made the comment that, well, I need this gem, because Raisa said, what do you need it for? So he answered and said, well, I need this gem for potentially casting a spell. I don't have much experience doing it. I haven't really been able to prove to do it, because quite honestly, it's kind of hard to practice a spell that costs $5,000 every time you wiggle your fingers, or more. But he mentioned, but I had this ace up my sleeve in case things get really bad for us. And I had a gem that I was going to use for this. But then when Marlo, or when you had your friend dead, I had to give it to you for that. Now, Marlo's reaction to that was hostile at best, let's just say. And after that fact, the Vizier very much changed his tone, his outlook, his attitude towards the party.
Yeah.
Does Radovan think, like some of the others, the Vizier is being a dick? Or does he see potentially where the Vizier may be coming from?
I wholeheartedly see where the Vizier is coming from. I hope that it was just a failure to understand magical components, because I understand that there are spells that I want to cast that are just too powerful or require things that I don't have.
Right.
And I hope that Marlo I don't know what's going through her head. I mean, she seems to feel slighted, or feel like she's not important or needed, or opinion doesn't matter. But then at the same time, what are we to the king and to the Vizier? We are not nobles. We are not, we are not council members. We were designated as diplomats. That was a choice that they offered to us. Like, do you want to be a diplomat? We need you to be a diplomat. And because of this past experience. And Radovan, of course, was like, well, sure, yes. I mean, if I can help you that way, I will. So we don't deserve to be given all the answers we might have questions for. So I am wholeheartedly on the Vizier side. I think Marlo was way out of line, especially since there are things that she has in her backstory that she won't even divulge to us. And we have asked her, hey, what's the story with the cup? What's the story with you and honor? And she's like, well, I'm not going to tell you. And
oh, I see what you're saying. So
now she feels slighted because she didn't get the answers she wanted to the questions.
Well, and that was the thing, is the Vizier,
really?
He did answer the question after the fact, when he finally felt he was pushed to a point where it was like, okay, look, you effing ingrates.
No.
I didn't tell you this stuff because you of all people know that your enemies could capture you, could force this information out of your brain, out of your mind. It's classic need to know stuff.
Right.
You know, beyond the point, we're talking about the king of an entire feudal world who is, look at history, above anybody. Simple fact. He is the shiznit. And then his royal advisor, who he adheres to, who already, as you guys know, is a great and powerful mage in his own right.
Right.
So to feel entitled like he owes you anything, in his mind, is like... Right, it's like, look, why are you acting ungrateful? I saved your life. I could have easily said, nope, that gem is spoken for, find another one. He didn't. He voluntarily said, okay. Never even tried to guilt trip you and say, well, I kind of got a plan for this, and if I give it to you, it's going to mean that I can't do something potentially really important later on, but if you really want it, you know, he just gave it to you guys. And then, when he found out that the king was going to send you to see the High Elves, he said, hey, if you get a chance, see if you can. He didn't even impose it like, you must get, you must bring, you must do. So, at that point, it's like now, and you know, we brought up the point, maybe he's not on the level. Right. Okay, maybe he isn't. Maybe he is a skullduggerous son of a bitch. This is a possibility. But let's look at the facts here. Fact 1, he did provide you a gem for free to resurrect Marlowe. He didn't force you to get the second gem. He didn't guilt trip you into getting it. He didn't order you to get it, which technically he could be, him and the king could be giving you guys no choices and saying, you're going to do this because, well, who's wearing the crown, mother effer? So if he is on the up and up, clearly he would possibly have a reason to be slighted. Let's just say, though, he's not. Let's say Marlowe has him pegged. He is a son of a bitch. Well, does it benefit you to piss him off and get him on your bad side?
I will just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, from Radovan's standpoint, can he see an avenue where those actions were in any way beneficial?
So,
and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Let's be clear.
I will just say there are two things that have been disseminated to Radovan,
right?
To me, not Shagget, but to Radovan, that are suspicious, right? When you look at Tadros the Vizier. The first is that a man who, the champion of the arena, who supposedly follows Cuthbert, and Cuthbert is honor, Cuthbert is truth, you know, I mean, in its way, says that he was manipulated before the king to profess to a crime that he says he did not commit. Now, either he's lying, or the Vizier compelled him, because the Vizier would be the only one, realistically, in Radovan's mind, who could compel him to profess to a crime. Now, that is suspicious, and Radovan has not forgotten it. Yet, if Tadros is working for the kingdom, having someone be professed to a crime that he did not commit might put a problem away that would be a bigger problem had he told the truth, if it was the truth.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, because sometimes when you're dealing with things on such a massive, grand level, while two wrongs don't make a right, sometimes there are definitely a lesser of two evils. Right. Just like Tadros saying to Rhaesa, you should not tell the king about your existence.
Right.
He may not be thinking about Rhaesa or the king, but the kingdom.
Right. So that's one thing that Radovan was like, well, that's a little suspect. He does believe that there is corruption running rampant in this place, that there are nobles that are probably not in the best interests of the king. He doesn't quite know who or why or what's really at foot in the underground. The other instance that he could say is suspicious is when the Vizier teleported them to Rockhelm and would not mention the Harrier Plains tribe. I mean, she didn't mention he didn't mention the name of the Harrier tribe to the west, which is the all-female. Like, there was some weirdness, and remember Kia was like, well, wait, why can't you just tell us if we're going to find it anyway? And then he made her forget, although Radovan doesn't know this, but Shagget does. Like, that's a little weird, and, like, why would you not even mention it? Okay. Now, apparently, they're all decimated, so it's a moot point. Like, it's not a big deal. Unfortunately, they're all dead. And it's a small potatoes kind of issue anyway, because we did find out the name. Those are the only two instances that Radovan has to say, well, the Vizier is an untrustworthy Vizier.
Right.
Tadros is untrustworthy.
But
everything else...
Yeah, I think the semblance of untrust is not in anything he's done. It's in anything that he doesn't divulge.
Right.
Right. It's like you could have told us.
Which he's entitled to not indulge.
Right. So that's the thing.
Most likely. Yeah.
Should he? Does he owe anybody anything? Is he in a position where he should feel obligated to? These are all the things. And of course, I'm not confirming or denying whether he is up to no good or not.
Of course.
We're looking at what happened and how it transpired, and were there smart plays made? Were there sensible actions done? Or were there detrimental actions done? And if there were detrimental actions what are the potential side effects of that? What are the potential consequences? Yeah. One that's apparent is up until basically the instance, Tadros had never been anything but pleasant and nice. You could almost say possibly slightly smarmy, but he'd always been very cordial.
Yeah. And now it's all going to shit.
And then, all of a sudden, he clearly got offended and was very matter-of-fact, stormed away, and instead of where you used to, our heroes have returned, sire, it was, the diplomats have returned, speak. Like, fuck y'all, type mentality. So, I mean, clearly, now, will that last? Will he let that go? Who knows? Is that something that's just pissy right now because it's an open wound?
And we'll see. Let's also remember that he left Reza telling her father who she was up to Reza.
Which he did.
That is a very tricky thing.
Yeah, he didn't say, I told you no, and I forbid it. Or he didn't take the letter, and then when she said, can I have it back? He could have said, no, I'm going to hold on to this.
This is too important.
This could fuck things up. No, he gave it back to Reza.
He did give it back, and that was the last thing Radovan has in his mind about that.
Right, but I definitely do see elements of potential to distrust this guy based on he doesn't divulge everything.
Right.
The question is, should you expect him to? Is it okay that he doesn't? I mean, as you say, it's all going to come out in the wash sooner or later.
Yep, it will.
So, the last thing we're going to talk about... So, let's talk about Amira Ryoto, the girl that approached Marlowe, praising her for a gladiatorial prowess, and then saying she believed that she needed help, but she believed that you guys could benefit from helping her.
Right.
What is your gut telling you on that one?
Honestly, like, anytime anyone approaches us and says, let's not go to the authorities with something that I know, Radovan goes, wait, that sounds stupid.
Right.
Her justification didn't make any sense. If to him, it's like, if they are responsible for this person being missing, us going to the authorities and alerting them that we know is not a surprising outcome, because it'll eventually come out anyway. It's if the guy doesn't show up to work, he's clearly missing. Right. So us investigating is not that big a deal. Also, let's remember that the champion of the arena who was said he would die, but he was being kept alive by them for whatever reason, and the party saved him. So to Radovan, it just didn't make any sense that we would implicitly trust her because of corruption being rampant. I mean, Radovan knows that there's corruption being rampant. He's seen guards take bribes. He's seen things get changed by nobles that run the Colosseum, and he doesn't doubt her. but that should not stop his imperative to be upfront with the authorities.
Well, and that's right. I mean, Radovan is, first of all, he's
Cuthbert.
first and foremost, he's a priest of St. Cuthbert, which believes in the effectiveness of law.
Right.
So it's against his nature, it's against his standard judgment to not follow the normal procedures of law. I get that. On the flip side, he's also a war priest, and he also knows that potentially these two bitches have put a hit out on Marlowe.
Right, and he would protect her to the death.
Right,
if they even
and
tried
exactly,
to
and clearly, as Radovan himself has pointed out, if they are so corrupt, if they are so iffy, how come they have not yet been brought to justice? So does that not in any way make Radovan doubt the possibility that the justice system will once again fail?
He does doubt the possibility. At this point, I will say that he's more inclined to go in front of the vizier and circumvent the magistrate. He trusts the vizier more than he would trust any other lesser authority.
Right.
But he did eventually acquiesce to her request to see about his house and follow the wishes of Marlowe and Kia. Raisa was a little bit more on the back fence until she learned about the mark.
Right.
About the hit. And, he wouldn't let Marlowe go alone into a possibly dangerous situation, even if it was a setup, which we still don't know what the deal is with her. We don't know the truth of it.
Gotcha. So
she did let him put a status spell on her, which will clue him in to her if she tries to jump away or flee.
Exactly.
So, he's going to see it until he hears something that he desperately knows needs to go in front of someone. And if that's the case, he'd probably whisper the vizier, for sure.
Right.
He'd probably, look, this is what we're doing here. We fear corruption. This is our plan of action. Please support us if you can. But then, of course, the whole Marlowe vizier thing happened, so...
Gotcha.
It's just a little sketchy.
Oh, well, So the premise is Amira Rioto was a very, very trusted friend of Dolan. Right. Dolan is the man that's gone missing. She's the person she came to discuss with you guys.
Yes.
Now, apparently, Dolan was about to get married the day before, and Amira had come to stay with Dolan to help him with his wedding plans. He had gone out to get flowers and never came back yesterday, the day before, when she talked to you guys. She smells foul play because he had mentioned before that he felt like he was being watched, someone was after him, this, that, and the other. But then he kind of sideways dismissed it, so she didn't push the point. He also has a black sapphire of incredible value, which she basically said was the root of all of his problems. Believed this is why the Glycerin sisters were involved. And it even said all she cared about was finding Dolan. If Dolan is found dead, but the sapphire is retained, you can have it.
Right.
10 plus grand of gem freely given. Of course, if he's alive, he probably wants his gem, so can't really give away his property if he's...
yeah.
But, so you went to his house, you do some investigating. Clearly, the house has not been ransacked in any way except for the wardrobe. Does Radovan have any thought processes that come from that? Does that make him realize anything?
You mean with the letter that he found?
Prior to the letter, you walk into the house is pristine, no problem, and then you find the wardrobe ransacked, and a small silver box on the table, opened, discarded. Obviously, what if anything was in it, it's now missing.
Well, so with that information before the letter discovery, the assumption can be that after kidnapping Dolan, the people who kidnapped Dolan went into his house and found the gem and the sapphire and took it.
Right.
Which confirms Amira's story. He's in trouble because
And again, the house isn't ransacked. Right. So they knew where it was.
They knew where it was, right.
They went straight to it. They went straight to the wardrobe. They got it.
Like they tortured it out of him or something.
Right, exactly. Could have been the case.
And it's scary.
Right. But in doing so, then you find a letter. Now, let's look at the letter. So the letter is written by Dolan, in theory. And it says, To my dearest Millicent, this is his fiancée. It would appear that things have finally caught up to me, and he is getting closer to finding me.
Right.
A dear friend of mine seems to believe they can keep me safe. However, if Peterivus thinks he can keep the stone from who it belongs to for long, I feel he is very much mistaken. It is hard to keep that kind of property from its rightful owner for long. I am sure others would find it valuable, but I trust my friend will hold it in safekeeping. I may not be able to write again, so I will just say I love you and hope things will work out. Your dearest Dolan. So what is your conclusion from the letter, first of all? Because clearly it was never delivered.
So the conclusion that I have found is that the sapphire never belonged to Dolan. The Dolan had stolen it, possibly, or taken it, or acquired it through some means, and someone was... The rightful owner was tracking him down.
Right.
And he had a friend by the name of Peterivus,
Peterivus,
who said, I can keep you safe from this person who's hunting you down. And so he went with Pat, essentially, into hiding.
Right.
That's the new... But also that Dolan is afraid that even Pat won't be able to stop this person from pursuing him.
Gotcha.
So Amira's story is bullshit. Unless she didn't know that he had previously stolen the sapphire from someone else and had thought that he had it all along. That's kind of a
it is possible. Of course, it's possible.
Right.
I mean, would he have said to her, "Hey, incidentally, this big gem of mine, I fucking nicked it." You know, I mean,
well,
it's entirely possible that he is not being 100% honest with her either. But whenever you guys mentioned the name, because nobody enlightened Amira of the letter, and then I think Racer was the one that said, "Had you heard of the name Peterivus before?" And at that point, she then was like, "Oh." And that's right where we ended it. So, of course, what she's about to divulge, we started going down that road, but then it kind of got pushed to the side because technical issues.
Sorry.
So the whatever she has to say about this guy may or may not change some things. Who knows? But as it stands right now, as Radovan is standing there about to listen to Amira tell you about Peterivus and what she knows, prior to that knowledge, your gut is telling you that Amira is a bullshit artist. She's not on the up and up, or she's naive, or not in the know.
Either she's naive or she's not on the up and up. He thinks that the only way that this would end is if he gets the sapphire and actually returns it to who it was stolen from. Of course,
which is a possibility.
Maybe he stole it from someone who's a really bad guy, like a necromancer or a cultist who wants to use the sapphire for bad things.
Right.
In which case, he would then want to give that sapphire to the vizier and say, "Hey, here's another thing you could use for your magical spells." But of course, he doesn't have that information, and he doesn't want to assume, right?
Gotcha.
If the sapphire was stolen from someone, he would return it to that someone, unless that someone was a bad motherfucker.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Get to the bottom of it.
A lot of stuff on poor Radovan's plate. So very quickly, we're going to go to our final segment and give you guys the open floor. If you have any questions, now would be the right time to ask them of us in our final segment of the evening.
Viewer questions and answers.
Alrighty, if you got any questions about the story, any questions of Radovan Rainier, any questions for me, or just any generic crap that you want to throw at in our direction, now is the time to ask them, and we'll try to answer those for you here for the next couple of minutes.
What are your thoughts on Keovan? You mean Kia and Radovan hooking up?
Or are they talking about that whole like fake marriage thing?
I mean, thoughts on the fake marriage is it was a means to an end, so yeah, it was a little uncomfortable, but he went with it.
Hey, sure, Jessamy, if you can throw crap at us, feel free to become rhesus monkeys and fling your poop.
I mean, I will say Kia has stepped up more than usual. She, of course, has still been mischievous, but she has had some suggestions that were for Cal for sure.
Right. For Cal!
Like the seeking out Lana idea is a really good idea for a potential ally of a weird nature. It could be possibly useful.
Who knows what she could bring to the table if she's willing to. That is a definitely interesting concept.
Did Radovan become a war priest because pieces for suckers? Pretty much endless. Pretty much.
Pacino says, did I just imagine it, or was the guy talking about two of his friends in the letter? The one with the gem and the one who he went into hiding with? Possibly.
Yeah, Pacino, I mean, this is how Radovan read the letter. A dear friend of mine seems to believe that they can keep me safe. However, if Pat thinks he can keep the stone from who it belongs to, like in Radovan's mind, those two sentences are linked.
Right.
That the dear friend is Pat's. But hey, it could be just, semantics. And Radovan can be wrong.
Is Kia still evil? Kia is not yet evil. She's just not good. Gore, what would be your preferred method to kill Radovan in this adventure? Oh, there's so many. I can't answer that because I might get to do it.
If Radovan gets eaten by a dragon, that would be fucking awesome. Especially if he does some damage on his way out.
Maybe Radovan can do like Johnny Depp did at the end of the second or the third. I think it was the second.
Oh yeah, just on the ship, right, with the Kraken coming.
Okay, beastie. And dive into its mouth. Yeah, I can see that. And you should be drunk when you do it too.
Rocklopster, does Radovan plan on pulling Marlo aside? In a way, I mean, he's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with her. Her kicking chairs and punching wardrobes, and calling him out on the fact that she died and he didn't die, and she's scared of dying again. That's a legitimate criticism of Radovan, I felt. At the same time, it's detrimental to her purpose, so he definitely is going to be keeping an eye on her for sure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of volatility going on. I mean, you got to realize there's so many emotions being gone through. You've got Marlo coming back from the dead. You've got Raisa basically being thrown into meeting her biological parents that she hasn't met in almost 3 decades, and all of a sudden they're both stuck in her face at the same time. There's a lot going on. Radovan had visions, presumably from St. Cuthbert, as he became a war priest, and it changed his outlook on some stuff. There's so much going on, and Kia is still pining over the loss of a small furry kitty cat.
Perspective, people.
Right.
Perspective.
But we say that jokingly, but to Kia, Cal clearly is a very important thing. Yeah. Now, psychologically, what's going on inside of Kia's head versus what she's outwardly projecting, who knows, right? So there's so many different things going on here. And then on top of that, oh, by the way, you're in the midst of helping to deal with an entire war that we're just going to stick you in the center of.
Yeah.
Not easy decisions to make.
Radovan should catch dysentery and die squirting his last into an outhouse. Well, he has, cure disease. So that's not going to happen, Moose Jaws.
Right.
He is a cleric, after all.
Rock Lobster is trying to test my integrity. I have a blank check. I will pay irresponsible amounts of money if Radovan dies to a mimic.
That would never happen, only because Radovan doesn't go loot treasure chests. It's not in his nature.
Yeah, it's much more likely that Racer would die from a mimic than Radovan.
What if Radovan gets polymorphed into a mimic and sent back in time to just before Veslar died? That would be amazing.
Dude, talk about your way to tie the campaigns together. Radovan actually killed Veslar in mimic form. Oh.
Mind blown.
Oh. How evil. Oh, indeed. That would be something. I couldn't do it now because chat gave me the idea. But hey, it could have happened.
Swallowed whole by a red dragon. The armored beasties aren't armored in the inside. Yeah, man. If I'm swallowed whole, I'll go to town in there. Being like that whale.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Story.
Mimics can be anything. One of my favorite mimics is literally to have a mimic at the top of like a ladder and have the mimic's tongue the ladder.
Ooh, that's good.
You climb up it, and then as you get to the top, you peer through this hole, and the mimic goes. That's a good way of doing it too.
Parking seal, yeah.
The bed is a mimic, damn straight.
So no more questions, huh?
How many turns until Redo dies from dragon stomach acid? Not many. Dragon would probably get indigestion and belch fire and incinerate him. Oh, I think I just got massively spoiled. I'm just about to finish the Dark Inquest series. Oh, man.
Yamikage.
Come out super horrible. There you go.
I'm sorry, man. Yes, Veslar does die.
Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks again to our guest, John Sheldon, who really had some enlightening stuff to say. Don't forget, if you haven't yet seen it, go see this. Go watch that video. Pay attention and think about what it is that you watch and maybe try to make a difference in your own small way. So, thank you so much for you guys for hanging out with us. We are getting out of here. We're past our time allotment already. Not that anybody...
Thank you, everybody, for the support. Thank you, John Sheldon, for the awesomeness that was your documentary.
Exactly. Thanks for our donations. Thanks to our follows. Thank you for each and every view and any of you that resubscribed tonight. We truly thank you. Tank Gary, y'all. We will see you tomorrow night for Shaggett's Hearthstone Academy.
Yep, that's on. Do cool things.
Awesome sauce. And Thursday night for the continuation of what's going to happen when Marlowe and Redovan tie into it. So, later, guys. You have a blast. Bye. Hi there, I'm Gorbad. Welcome to the Orc's Nest. I'm the Dungeon Master here on Howreroll, and if you'd like to follow me personally, you can do so on Twitter @Gorbad. Check out thedmblog.com for all things Dungeon Master and Dungeons & Dragons related. And of course, you can follow me on twitch.tv/Gorbad. Also, guys, don't forget to keep up with all things Howreroll, follow us on Twitter @Howreroll. Check out the website www.howreroll.com and make sure you follow us on YouTube as well. Cheers, guys.
When I'm not playing Radovan Rainier, Cleric of St. Cuthbert for Howreroll, I'm just Shagget, a guy who can't do math in public. You can follow this poor lost soul on twitch.tv/Shagget or on Twitter @Aneb_convos. For the love of all things boozy, stay in school.
I'm the Dragon Spooker, and I play Marlowe the Hot-Blooded Monk for Howreroll. You can catch my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/thedragonspooker, or you can follow me on Twitter at @dragonspooker. I hope to see you guys around.
Hi guys, thanks for watching today's episode of Howreroll. I hope you had a lot of fun, and if you'd like, you can give me a follow at Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook @Bane Blackstar, or come say hi in my own Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Bane1271. I stream full-time and usually play World of Warcraft, The Sims 4, and I even craft things out of polymer clay, but you never know what we'll get up to. I hope you'll come say hi, join in the conversation, and have some fun.
Hi, I'm Jane, and when I'm not fireballing innocent peasants, I'm perusing Twitter, eating ice cream, and petting my cat Norman. You can follow me on Twitch @JaneIvana, and on Twitter @JaneOnTwitch, and that's with a 0, not an L. Goodbye. Or as I say, peace, suckus.